In this video, we're going to set up the top shirt buttons and loops. I've already taken the liberty of copying over our default stack setup, and in here it's very simple actually. I've replaced the attribute paints with a fresh one, and we're only subdividing each one of these pieces of geometry one time. Basically for the same reason as last time, I need more points because I'm going to be using stitch. I need more points to attach to this top shirt. I took the liberty of also changing out these. I don't think you need to see this again. This is very simple. Top shirt loops and top shirt loops for the collision groups in the name. And for this one, it'll be top shirt buttons and top shirt buttons. Also identical for each of these is going to be a simple cloth and strut setup here that I'm going to set up on one of these. And I'm going to paint points on both the top shirt and the buttons so that they will attach. I will do the same thing for the loops. All right, let's get started. Let's put some vellum struts. Configure strut soft body. This will put in two nodes for you, a cloth and a struts node. We'll go ahead and hook this up right here. So let's talk about the cloth settings here. Let's leave them all default except for one thing. We're going to reduce the bend, and we're going to reduce it significantly because we're going to put a lot of struts in there to keep these buttons solid. What happens if you put a high bend stiffness? You tend to get a lot of sizzling with struts. It tends to kind of wobble. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce it down by 1,000 units here, and I'm just going to leave that there. So we'll leave everything else by default. Let's go to the struts, and in the struts, let's go ahead and visualize this. Okay, so we're looking at the struts now. Let's go ahead and change the jitter direction so we can see that there's more. And let's go ahead and add 50. And that's right, it seems kind of high, but 50 struts per point with a high jitter ratio here should allow us to have lots of struts spreading around, and it'll keep this thing pretty solid. We'll leave everything else the same. So we're going to go ahead and just copy these nodes, Control Copy, Control V. Connect up the same way we did with our buttons. Same as our loops. This looks pretty good. This will keep them the shape of a loop and not flopping around. This will give them each volume and kind of keep them together. So I'm just going to keep the same settings for now. We can modify those later if we want to. In order to get these to all work together, they have to be part of the same stream to use the stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some merging action here. So cut that here, and we're going to pack everything together. So this is the shirt. We're going to pack each one of these. It's going to drop a few of these vellum pack nodes up, and then we're going to drop a standard merge node, put everything in the same stream, use a vellum unpack node so everything's properly unpacked. Just do a little cleanup here, and then move the solver over to this stream. There we go. Then move our collision object to be going directly into the solver. Okay, now that we have our vellum stitch constraints set up, let's go ahead and paint those attributes that we need to paint. Let's start with the ones on the shirt first. Before you do that, just make sure you have any of these kind of solved nodes deselected, or they're not referenced, so that your painting doesn't go entirely slow. Okay, let's go ahead and check this out. So the last time we painted, we still have this group over here, so we'll just go ahead and paint the buttons portion first. So let's add the two attributes. Okay, so we'll do top shirt buttons stitch target and top shirt loops stitch target. Okay, let's go ahead and pick top shirt button stitch target float. Let's paint these values real quick. Okay, that looks good. Let's paint the loop side now. So we'll select another group of points here, just that we had last time. We'll just deselect everything. Pick a few points over here where the loops may be, right next to the buttons. Let's turn the visibility of our loops on. There we go. And let's switch to the different attribute here. This switch. There we go. So I want to paint on the underside of this thing. This is going to be interesting. I do have the ability to lift that lapel up that I still have. Let's go ahead and do it. Perfect. Let's go ahead and paint in there, side on the underside, and let's get rid of this stuff on the inside. I'm going to switch to surface real quick here so I can get to the surface and remove that, but I should be able to paint on that side. Okay, let's go ahead and turn that off. Let's just quickly paint the other locations where the loops are attached. I'm not sure if we should have that on the other side too. Maybe we should have that on the other side so that they don't plop off the buttons, so they're kind of stuck with the buttons. I think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to add some points here. I'm actually going to paint on that side. And this way they don't flop off the buttons. But on these guys, we want to stay on one side. And that looks pretty good. It's sloppy, but it might do the job. We'll see what we get here. Okay, now that we have our stitch target locations painted on our actual top shirt, let's go and paint positions on each one of these loops at the base of each loop where they're going to attach to the top shirt. Okay, so first let's add an attribute. Call it top shirt loops stitch. Okay, let's switch to that attribute here. Pick a brush. Pick a nice volume brush, and we'll just quickly jam through these. Now let's jump over to the buttons and paint the same on the buttons here. So we'll go ahead and select those. We'll go to the attributes. We'll add a new attribute. We'll call it top shirt button stitch, and we'll switch to that attribute. We'll go ahead and paint here on each one of these. I think I'm just going to add a little extra room here for everything to attach. Okay, this looks good. Okay, we've painted this. Let's go down to our first vellum constraint here. We'll pick this up. Okay, we'll switch the group type to points, and we'll say at top shirt underscore buttons underscore stitch is greater than 0.1, or we'll do 0.5 now. And for the target group, we'll do at top shirt underscore buttons underscore stitch underscore target is greater than 0.5, but 0.1 is probably the better one for each one. And you can see the springs form there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, let's go to the vellum constraint for the loops. Okay, we'll change it to points. We'll say at top shirt underscore loops stitch greater than 0.1, and for the target geometry, we'll do points at top shirt underscore loops underscore stitch underscore target is greater than 0.1, and you can see the springs have formed here. This one, I kind of want this one to be painted on the other side as well. I wanted these loops that are attached to be painted over here as well, so I need to go back and paint along those edges on the ones that are there. So I will go back and do that right now on the loops. Let's make sure the buttons are visible. I can paint on the loops. So for these ones, I want them to be looped around, all the way around. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's go back and check our positions on this. That way these don't dance around so much or flop off, and they don't have to collide so much with the bottoms of the buttons, etc. So this looks pretty good. I'm ready to actually simulate this, so let's go ahead and copy over the attribute. Actually, it looks like it was already there, and the solver already had all the values we need. So let's go ahead and run it. I forgot I'm reusing the solver, so let's unload this, and we'll sim it in the background. Some preliminary results are in for our sim, and this is kind of funny. You can see that each button and loop probably weighs about 500 kilograms. It's pulling our shirt right off here. So I'm going to, what I did is I went back and changed the mass on the cloth here by a factor of 10. And instead of calculating uniform, I'm calculating varying, and I reduced by a factor of 10. So I'm simming that now, and we will see the results. We can probably see them right now, actually. Let's go to version 3 and load it. Let's see what we're getting here. Okay, it's not too bad. Still a little heavy, but let's wait and see what the results look like so we can make a better decision. Okay, here we go. So if we scrub just a little bit here, we see the weight of this is still very rubbery. It feels like it's very heavy, so we'll have to adjust that at some point. But if you look at the buttons and the loops, they're actually staying on quite nicely. Another thing we might want to do is pin the shoulders using a pin to target on the shoulder part, maybe behind there in the area I like to pin it, so that the shoulders stay on this, so that it doesn't wobble around too much. But it doesn't look too bad. If you played it through real time, it would look actually pretty decent, and it would give you the effect you need. So I'm just going to leave it as is for now, and we'll address this later. One last thing we have to do, and that is put the vellum pack node in there, back in there, vel pack. And we'll just connect these up with our outputs from our sim controls, and then put that back reconnected to the proper top shirt out node. Okay, this looks good. Let's move on to the next garment.